While topwaters are the most exciting way to catch peacock bass, sometimes they're just not hitting on top. Fish, if you think about it, they're only eating on top probably not even 10% of the time, and most of the time they're eating underneath the surface. So I try and bring at least 2 rigs that are dedicated to subsurface presentations, and I'll go through those now with you. A subsurface outfit to throw mostly subsurface jerkbaits. So for this, I've got a Megabass Treza travel rod rated 12 to 30 pound. So strong enough to throw pretty good sized jerkbaits for big peacocks, but also pretty lightweight, not going to tire me out casting all day in the tropical sun. For the reel, I've got a Daiwa Zillion TW HD, which has a fast retrieve ratio 8.1 to 1. Again, any peacock bass fishing, you want a pretty fast retrieve ratio because they're just not going to be interested if you reel anything in slowly. And I always like to have a faster retrieve ratio because you can always reel more slowly, but it's hard to reel faster, and it's more tiring to reel faster if you have a slow retrieve ratio. So the Zillion is a great choice for this, holds a lot of line. I've got, I think, 40 pound Daiwa Samurai braid on this, so a little lighter for the subsurface. But that I've never had a problem using the 40 pound. So I'm going to attach that again. This time I'm going to subsurface. I'm going to be using a fluorocarbon leader. This is a Daiwa J Fluoro 40 pounds, so I go down a little bit in weight, give it a little more action underwater. And this is the kind of jerkbait that I'm going to be throwing. This is a Rapala X-Wrap. Again, I've switched out the split rings, the hooks for the nice singles, nice strong singles. In terms of color, a lot of different colors work. I've had some good success on white, I've had some good success on green. This white one in particular, I once had a double. I had a 15 pound on one hook and a 6 pound on the other hook, and I got all the way to the boat and then somehow it broke off. But I saw both fish, and that's still one of the saddest losses I think I've ever had on a fishing trip, but that was on this exact lure here. There's a couple other ones I like to use as well. Subsurface, there's a lot of different ways you can go, so you just gotta throw them and see what's working that day. One bait I always bring to the Amazon is the Yo-Zuri Crystal Minnow. It's a little smaller, it's about 4.5 inches, but it's got great flash, and it just works on basically anything that swims that eats fish, which certainly includes peacock bass. So it's a great all-around choice. Catches payara, catches a lot of things. So it's a great all-around choice to bring down there. This is a big jerkbait from K10. It's a little bigger than the Yo-Zuri Crystal Minnow. Great color, great flash, good size. Another good one to have. This one probably not a ton of people use, but I once caught 70 peacock bass in one spot with this lure. This is the Sebile Stick Shad, and it's the sinking version. You just rip it, and as it falls, it kind of flutters and just provides another look for the peacocks. This one I actually have never tried before, but I've heard good things about it. It's from a Brazilian company called Borboleta. This is the Safada. It's a little bigger than their other similar lure called the Perversa. So this has a lot of action, and I'm really excited to try it out. The last outfit I like to bring is a little lighter subsurface rig. This is, again, the Megabass Treza travel rod. This one's a little lighter. It's 10 to 25 rated, so it's a little lighter than the jerkbait rod. And I'm using this to throw mostly jigs, bucktail jig type lures, so a lot lighter than the other things that I've been showing. For the reel, I've got a Daiwa Steez A, which is the aluminum frame Steez, and it has a retrieve ratio of 8.5 to 1, so very fast. And it's loaded with the 40 pound Daiwa Samurai braid, and I attached to that a 30 pound leader, because with the jigs and flies, I like to have a little lighter leader to give it a little better action. Now, most people throw a bucktail jig for peacock, something like this maybe, like a 3/4 ounce lead head with a pretty long streamer of bucktail or feathers. These work fine, these work great. I've caught a lot of peacocks with these, but I've kind of switched over to flies like this. So I use a streamer fly like this, nice bright flashy streamer fly, and I'll fish it on conventional gear by using a bullet head like this and just tying it like that so that you fish it like a jig really quickly, zipping it in just like you would with a bucktail jig. But the advantage of this is a lot of times piranhas are going to come and cut off the back with just one bite, and then you don't have a usable lure anymore. So with the bucktail jigs, if you're going to fish them a lot, you might have to bring 30 or 40 of these things, and I've gone through 30 in a week before. So that's kind of a lot of lead to bring. So with the flies, I'm just bringing a couple of these bullet heads. This one actually rattles, so it provides some noise as well. I can get away with just bringing, a couple of these in each weight, and then if I get snipped off, I just have to replace the fly. And so it saves you a little bit on weight for the float plane trips. You're not bringing as much lead. I like the fly action. I get just as much interest from the Peacocks with it as I do the bucktail jig. So that's the setup I use. I also use a little bobber stopper to keep the bullet weight from sliding around too much. So for this setup, again, I'm fishing almost exclusively either the bucktail jigs or the flies. For this upcoming trip I have to Brazil, I'm just going to be bringing flies. I'm not going to bring any bucktail jigs. Here are just a few examples of some of the many peacocks that I've caught using the fly and bullet weight combo. I'm going to show you the two trays I typically pack for subsurface. The first one has my jerk baits. So these are the lures I talked about, a couple X-Wraps, a couple of the K10s, a couple of the Sebile stick sheds, and the Borboleta lures. And you don't need to bring a ton, but I like to bring at least a couple of each one in case I do lose one. My second box has my flies, and like I mentioned, you can pack a lot of flies in a relatively small space, so I'm bringing well over 20 flies. I'm also bringing a couple of the bullet weights in a couple different sizes, some that rattle, some don't, a couple extra split rings, and some spare hooks, because you're definitely going to bend out a hook or two on a trip like this. So this is what I bring for subsurface fishing for peacock bass. Stay tuned for part 3, where I talk about all the other things I pack, non-fishing gear related, which are just as important.